Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to our stream. As always, my name is Seth. Thank you guys so much for being here. We are running a few minutes late tonight. Jacob had to run an errand, and so he's with us now, and so we're live. And if you join us as usual, we are live now over on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And if you are joining us on Facebook and YouTube, you can, of course, pop over into your comments and get those into the show, and we'll read them on air. And as you can see, we have a special guest with us tonight, David Carl, Director of Communications and Fan Experience from New Mexico United. We're going to hop right into our show. And so tonight we're going to talk about the bond. We're going to talk about David and his transition from leading the Curse into the front office and how that's been for him. We're going to talk some RGV. Let me change this layout here. There we go. We'll talk some RGV. We'll talk some Lou City. David's going to have an interesting perspective on that this week, I think. And so we're going to jump right into it, guys. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Somos Mas, the official podcast of Somos Mas NM and your source for the latest news and notes on New Mexico United. My name, of course, is Seth Bidoff. Joining me tonight, we have Jacob Terrell and special guest David Carl from New Mexico United. David, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate you taking some time out of your evening. I know you're actually out of town right now, so we definitely appreciate you taking the time out and coming to talk to us. And we talked to Peter yesterday. Got a great interview with him. And first, again, thank you for being here. And I got to ask you first and foremost. Most people know you as one of the co-founders of the Curse, president of the Curse, and now you've transitioned into the role that we know you more as now. We deal with you more frequently. And how's that transition been for you? And how hard is it to not cheer in the press box as we've been told not to do?
Yeah. Thanks for having me on, guys. Appreciate you having me here. And yeah, I'm out of town. I'm in Ohio visiting some family. Actually, going to kind of make this all work out. Family out here in Columbus, and then we got Chanel and I got here today, and we're gonna drive out on Saturday out to Louisville from here. So my family will all be there watching the match on Sunday, and then we'll fly back from Louisville to Albuquerque. Kind of a nice little quick trip and see the guys, hopefully get a win in Louisville on Sunday. But to answer your question, the transition's been fun and exciting and weird and all these different adjectives. But to answer your more direct question, it is incredibly difficult to not cheer in the press box, which is why I think you're well aware. You're up there every match with me. As long as there's not an away team representative in the press box, we kind of ignore that rule, if I'm going to be really honest.
Yeah, no, it's extremely hard. And, Jacob and Earl typically go down to the dugout and they're on the field and doing stuff and hanging out down there, talking to some folks down there. And I know last night, it was really hard last night. There was, of course, the RGV video analyst up there in the box. And I will say that he was not happy with the way things were going last night. And he left rather quickly.
Yeah, and we made sure to thank him for coming and wish him the best on his journey and all that kind of stuff. And then as soon as he left the press box, I think we had a little bit of a cheer. So pretty much impossible for me to ever stop being a fan. That's the thing. I started off that way, and even though I get paid now, I'm always going to be a fan of this club.
So how soon after the announcement of the club did you actually get together with RJ and form the Curse, and how quickly did that come about? And this is something that I've been kind of curious about. What actually goes into creating a supporters group and getting involved with the ISC?
Yeah, creating a supporters group, man. If you figure that one out, you let me know, because I don't think there's like a playbook for it, right? So, shortly after the team was announced, actually the next day after the team was announced, there was kind of a meet and greet at a local bar where Pete was going to be there, and Ron Patel and Lucas, and it said, if you're interested in kind of meeting some of the front office folks, come on out. I wasn't at the announcement that a bunch of people were at when the club was actually announced as USL New Mexico. But that second day, I went there and met a couple of the folks there. I'd known Ron and Lucas from their time with the Albuquerque Soul. I was a fan of them, and they had a form there that you could fill out if you were interested in season tickets. So I filled that form out, and on there was a checkbox. You could check this box if you're interested in being part of a supporters group or supporters group leadership, I think it was. And so I checked the box and filled out the form and signed up for my season tickets, put down my deposit. And then a couple days later, got an email from Lucas, and a few other folks were on that email. And he said, the 6 of you guys checked the box. I'm going to leave you alone to do whatever it is you want to do on the supporters group thing. So it's myself, Andrew Bolte, RJ Montano, and 3 other folks. And we all met up at Steelbender Brew Yard a couple days later and said, let's make a supporters group. And it kind of went from there. Our goal was to have 50 people by the end of the year in year 1, and we ended up with 550. So it was crazy. It was a whirlwind. And I'm sure we did a lot of things wrong. I'm sure we could have done things a lot better, but I'm happy with how it turned out.
So with your role with New Mexico United now, how did that transition come up, and what technically is your job description for New Mexico United?
I don't know. But it's funny. The way it came up was I, like a lot of other people, got laid off during COVID. I was the director of communications up at Santa Fe Public Schools. And public schools, man, they deal with a lot of budget cuts during COVID. They try and keep people around. They can only do so much, and public school districts in general are underfunded as it is, and then add in a global pandemic to that. And so kind of my whole department was cut. And I texted Pete, not looking for a job, just kind of as a friend, and said, hey, yeah, I'm out of work. And it was just kind of serendipitous timing that the previous communications director, Jessica Campbell, was just about to move on to a gig with the city of Albuquerque. And so, talked to Pete a little bit, and, he let me know that. I didn't know that at the time. He let me know that that was a possibility, and we kind of worked together to make it a little bit more than just communications director, right? So the comms is my background. It's what I've worked in. I was a reporter for a while and then made the switch over to communications. But my heart really more than anything is with the fans. My heart more than anything is with, the supporters culture and all of that. And so Pete and I had a conversation that came down to let's create this role. It's kind of a hybrid role where it's your director of communications and all the stuff that you normally do, the stuff that I interact with you guys on, with press conferences and press box and all that kind of stuff, press releases. But then in addition to that, I really wanted kind of the role being the liaison between fans and club, making sure that fans have a voice at the table, making sure fans' voices are heard. I think that's a really important role. And some clubs have a role similar to that, some don't. We didn't have a role similar to that. So I said to Pete, I would love to make kind of this hybrid role, make sure that fans are always represented, whether they're part of a supporters group or not, whether they're part of this supporters group, that supporters group, no matter where they sit in the stadium, whether it's their first game or their 50th game. So we kind of made this hybrid role. And as far as the job description, it changes depending on the day.
As some folks may not know, that even though you're in this official capacity with the club, you do still go down, you march for the curse every match. You do still participate. I mean, for I think what was it, a few weeks ago, you went down, you dressed as a banana and hanging out, and you still seem to enjoy the aspects of both sides of it. And from our perspective, like, we enjoy that because we do get that interaction that a lot of folks don't see. And I think, coming from that fan experience to now working with the club directly, I think that's an interesting link, and it lets you like connect more with the fans.
I agree. And I think I appreciate you saying that. I think it's just, it allows for that level of realness. I think, something that I think Pete mentioned to you in the interview he did with you the other day, Seth. We wanted to create this team, and they wanted to create this team when they created it, with as few barriers as possible, whether that be on a media level or whether that be, on a fan level. This should feel like our community team because it is. And I think it just kind of makes sense. I am a lifelong member of the Curse. I'm proud of all of the supporters groups that we have, the supporters culture that we've built, whether it's, Sector 114 or 205 Front Row or the Set Piece Ultras or the Black Diamonds, and there's list goes on, La Maldición, Cursitos, and the Curse. I mean, we have an incredible supporters culture, and that's something I'm really, really proud of. And selfishly, I just want to be a part of it too. I think that's something that is easy to overlook, right? Like, just because I work for the team doesn't mean I'm not a human, right? I enjoy supporting this team. I enjoy being part of it. And I think the supporters groups that we have do an incredible job of making that accessible for everybody. And I'm really happy that I get to be a part of it.
Yeah, we mentioned the accessibility and the openness, and Peter not wanting there to be any barriers. And from season one, like we've seen that through the different projects that have popped up, from Somos Unidos News to Seek and Strike to us, and even the larger news outlets here in town. The TV stations and ESPN Radio, and there's always been this tremendous level of access. And I think, honestly, since season one, I think it's grown even more. Even last year when the team was on the road, and that had to have been a unique set of circumstances and difficulties with that, and just still being able to communicate with you guys and, working through that. And, even, this year, dealing with all the COVID restrictions and things. And I think that the club has handled it fantastically. And, I think that because, we talk to other folks that don't get the same level of access. And at this level of professional sports, at Division II soccer, like I think a lot of the coverage it comes from smaller outlets, and so being able to have that access is just absolutely tremendous and helps the growth.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And like I said, I'm a former journalist, so that access is important to me too, right? The ability for people to be able to tell the story, and you don't need to necessarily be. You don't need to have a big outlet behind your name in order to be willing to tell a story. And I think that's really, really important. So, whether it's a blog or a big newspaper or a TV station or somewhere in between, everybody has the right to tell a story. And who am I to say that they can't? Now, when we get to a point where we only have a certain amount of space in the press box, we got to figure that out. We can't give people 10 press passes, but I think it's great. I remember in 2019, and I think in pieces of 2020, Little Miss, Dalen, she was doing some pieces that would go on the United website. And I think that's awesome. Obviously Dalen does not have a journalism degree. She's much too young for that, but she wanted to tell stories and she loves the team. And I think that's wonderful. So we want to encourage that wherever we can. And again, the whole thing is about building community, right? And it helps tell community stories. If you have people who are in the community like you guys, people who are fans as well, tell those stories. And I think that's really important. So to the extent that we have the ability to, and league restrictions and all that kind of stuff, we want to make the access available to whomever we can.
All right. So if you are just now joining us, we have had a few folks pop in and take a look here. If you are on Facebook, YouTube, as always, be sure to hop over the comments. We've got David here. So if you've got questions, we're going to talk about the bond. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about RGV. We'll talk about Lou City. Throw your questions and comments up in the chat. We'll answer them, as best we can. David's here. David can answer things that we can't. And so appreciate everyone being here, and we'd like to see some interaction in the chat. So. I mean, let's talk about it. Last night, New Mexico United picked up a 2-0 win over RGV, and we won 4-5 after a stretch where things weren't quite looking so good. And we got to talk to Chris Wehan last night after the match, and Bees has picked up 5 goals since his return, 3 in 3 matches, and David, from your perspective, you get to see the club on a daily basis. You get to see the guys, and you get to be out there at training and things like that. What are you seeing that's translating from the practice field to the games, and that's really turned things around here the past few weeks?
Yeah, I'm not out at training every day by any means, but I think I can see with the interactions the guys have. Troy has always prided himself on having a positive locker room. You guys are well aware he's always wanted to keep the locker room relatively small for that reason, to try and keep it positive, make sure you've got guys competing out there. But when you bring guys in like David Najum, like Sully Muhammad, like Chris Wehan, I mean, those guys are such glue guys, not to mention being incredibly talented, but like they're guys with just the right work ethic and attitude and fight and grit and determination. And I think they make the difference in any locker room. And not to say that there are any issues, with the locker room as it was before. You've got incredible leaders like Kalen Ryden and Josh Suggs and Devin Sandoval, and I could name several others. But when you bring in guys like that, I think it creates, one, a level of competition because these guys want to just fight for their spots. But two, I think, Salim mentioned it last night in the press conference, Seth, you were there. That level of accountability, right? He said coming here, he felt like the guys were keeping him accountable in training every single day. And he's returning the favor, right? These guys are fighting for positions. These guys are holding each other accountable. These guys are essentially upholding the ethos of the club, which is hard work, humility, and diligence. And I think it's crucial. I think those guys have made such a huge difference in the season. And in addition to that, I think we all hoped that after that, 7-match streak without a win, that we would find the form, right? That we would. This team is too talented to not find the form. I still think, I know we had a lot of success in 2019 and 2020. We, won our first playoff game. I think it's the most talented team we've ever had. I really do. Just top to bottom talent. So you would really hope they would find their form, and knock on wood, it seems like they may have just found that form at the right time. Now going into Lou City is no easy matchup, and I'm really excited for that one. But we're in the right form to be going out to the East Coast and playing one of the best teams in that conference.
What do you think has changed from that 7-game streak to now, other than the new additions?
I think a level of confidence, right? I think confidence is so easily won and lost, right? And it sometimes it has nothing to do with your form. It can literally be the bounce of a ball, right? It can be things as simple as a goal being called offside that wasn't actually offside. It can be, that's not a subtweet, by the way. It can be it can be any number of things. But I think you find that first flicker, and there's gas in the room, right? And that first flicker of a match lights and sparks, and all of a sudden you have a team with a little bit more swagger. And I think these guys have some swagger and some confidence right now. And here's hoping that continues. And like I said, confidence, I think, breeds success, and then success breeds confidence. And you can either be on a positive cycle or you can be on a negative cycle. And right now, hopefully it seems like a positive one, and hopefully it keeps that way.
Let me ask you this. During that 7-match stretch, and even before that, we've seen social media kind of tip towards, one way. And I'm sure you're familiar with the Troy out sort of movement that had gone on, and
sure.
And how much of that actually gets back to the guys at the club? How much do they pay attention to that? And do they, and I don't know if you can speak to it, but do they take that and use that as motivation to kind of right things?
Well, I can tell you in the front office, I see it. I part of what I do is I'm on social media a lot too. That's, again, something I enjoy, interacting with the fans. But as far as the players and the coaches, I don't think they see it quite as much. I know that Troy doesn't really do social media at all. But as far as kind of some of the players are more interactive on social media than others. Like guys like Sergio Rivas is on social all the time. Kalen Ryden, he throws a tweet here and there, but I don't think he really monitors it as much. I think these guys are just so incredibly focused on the match-to-match day that I don't know that they necessarily get into that kind of minutia. But if I'm one of those guys and I see something like that, it just motivates me more, right? These guys love Troy, and they want to fight for him. And so when I'd imagine, this is speculation, but I imagine if they see something like that, if that's me, I want to fight for my coach.
Yeah, no, and that's something that we've discussed several times. And as sports fans, I'm sure that there have been some Arsenal fans this year that have kind of been on the Arteta out bandwagon, and so, but that's just a natural reaction. I feel like when things aren't going well. Now, I do feel like there are some people that do take it too far, but that's it's just I feel like as a sports fan, we're able to be critical, and that's something that as Jacob and Earl and myself as fans and as a group that covers the club, you guys have never stepped in and said, hey, just back off, because I know that we've got to. I know that we at times do get critical and we question, and we everyone's a Monday morning quarterback. There's no way I could do what Troy or Zach or those guys do, and so. Has there ever been a point where you, as the communications director, has felt like, okay, someone's kind of taking a little bit too far with this, and maybe they need to take a step back?
The way I look at it, I don't necessarily have to agree with everything everybody's posting. I certainly don't. At times, I'm maybe Troy's number one fanboy, to be perfectly full disclosure. With that said, the thing I would really hate, Seth, Jacob, would be if nobody was talking about it, right? The passion's there. People care. whether they are really strong opinion in one way, whether they have a really strong opinion in the other way, whether I agree with them or not, it's important to see the passion. I mean, if we got just absolutely destroyed by, 4, 5, 6, 7 goals, whatever, and nobody was complaining about it on social media, I'd be worried, man. I would be really worried. But the fact that people care, the fact that there's passion, the fact that people are willing to say, hey, this doesn't seem right, or the fact that they're thrilled when we win on the other side of things. The fact that we saw this huge level of excitement after a really great win last night. Both of those things are equally important. And like I said, the minute we lose the passion is the minute we're in trouble.
Yeah, I know that you're fairly active on Reddit, and I know your username. I know there some folks don't know who you are, and so
I know yours too, by the way.
I know. So you kind of float under the radar a little bit over on Reddit, and I think Reddit's one of the better places. I think it's a fantastic community over there, and there's a lot of folks that have jumped in and gotten involved, and so I know you kind of pop into some threads, and people don't really know that it's you, and so. And like with me, like people know who I am because I've made it very clear. This is my name. This is what I do. Promoting the shows and talking about the club and stuff. And
yeah.
And one question that I have been getting over there, I have seen is earlier in this, or I think it's like 2019, the club was broadcasting the post match on like Instagram, and there was questions about is that going to come back at some point?
Yeah, man. I wanted to do that this year. Really wanted to do it this year. The issue we had going into this year was just kind of personnel, just trying to make things work out as far as timing goes, and making sure that we got somebody over there who could record, live stream it, for example, whether it be Instagram, Twitter, or wherever. But yes is the answer to that. Want to do that. We're going to find a way to do that next year, certainly. We wanted to do it this year, just weren't able to make it happen. But yes is the short answer to that, absolutely. And I know you post you often post the quotes from the quote sheet, which is a nice way to make sure that people get that out there. But yeah, if we can give people the live stream, I think like I said, the big issue we had was personnel. But the other thing was we need to make sure we can make it look good, right? I'm sure you guys remember earlier this season, the preseason, we had that first game out of Mesa del Sol, and the live stream was awful. Oh God, it was so bad. And we did our best, but the Wi-Fi out there is terrible. The internet's out there, it's terrible. And it was shot on a phone, and it wasn't the quality that we wanted, right? And so what I don't want to do is that. I don't want us to live stream, from a janky phone that, we're getting, 6 frames a minute, it just looks terrible. So yes is the answer. I want to do it next year. Just got to make sure we do it in a way where people can actually enjoy it.
All right, great. I know some folks are going to be excited about that, and yeah, I try to go out and post whatever I can. I've been taking the audio recordings from the pressers and putting those out as well, and people seem to be responding really well, and we've gotten good feedback on that because as open as the club is with us as media that cover the club, sometimes the community feels like, okay, well, we don't understand what's going on, and so. By you or me or whoever putting out the stuff from the presser, like they're like, okay, we kind of understand a little bit more what Troy's talking about. And
yeah,
I try to say, I believe Troy's from the Bill Belichick school of quotes, and so he tries not to give too much out there, and I think it's fantastic. We try to, we've talked about, we try to break Troy a little bit. So we try to have fun, but it's always appreciated, especially with the guys. And after I think a few weeks ago, I think it was Justin, who just was not happy after the match, and so trying to convey that to people, when they don't see that, and so I think that's something that the fans love to see.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%, and I think Troy is much better dressed than Bill Belichick. But you're right. I mean, there will be some things, and it's his job first and foremost is to make sure that the guys can win on the field, right? And so there will be times, Seth, Jacob, when you guys have a question, and maybe it's tactical, maybe it's something mental, and it's like, I don't want to give you an answer on that, and I can't tell him to give you an answer on that. I'm not going to try. I'm certainly not going to try because that's not going to go well for me. But and it's funny because I'll hear you guys ask that question, and I think we talked about this the other day, Seth. But I'll hear Seth, you'll ask a question, and in my head I'll be like, Troy's not going to answer that, not in the way that Seth wants. But you got to ask. You got to ask. You wouldn't be doing your job if you didn't ask.
Yeah, I think going back to the press conferences being on Twitter or whatever you guys can do, I think that would go a long way in kind of quelling the Troy out movement that is on social media because what a lot of fans don't see is Troy interacting with us and talking to us, and yeah, his answers might be kind of cookie cutter on some questions, but he does show a lot of personality and passion in a lot of his answers when he does feel like answering them, and it's hard, if I'll be perfectly candid. There are definitely times that I've questioned some of his tactics and some of his lineups, and knowing full well that he knows the team and way more. He's probably forgot more about soccer than I'll ever know.
No offense, but yeah. I mean, he's a genius, right?
Yeah. So I know that I'm not dumb, but I can still question it, and. But then, like, I could be super mad at a decision he made, and then we go to the press conference, and he comes in all smiling and happy, and talks to us and asks how we're doing, and it's like, man, that's just such a great guy. And sometimes being the manager of a club, and especially a community-oriented club like New Mexico United, and everything he has done, and what he believes on how to help New Mexico as a whole, and Albuquerque, and the stuff that he does off the pitch, it's like, yeah, he might play Juan Pablo Guzman a little too much for my liking, but I'm not. I want him here. I'd rather him be here than anywhere else.
Yeah, I totally hear what you're saying. I mean, I like I said, my past life, I was a reporter, and I've covered a lot of teams. College basketball, college football, college soccer, professional soccer, baseball, hockey. Covered a lot of teams, and I have never met a coach who is more genuine and real and honest, frankly, than Troy. Like you said, there may be some things he doesn't want to talk about, and he's got a right to do that as a coach. But he cares about you as a person, and he's real. I can tell you, Bob Huggins. I covered him at West Virginia when I went to school there, head coach at WVU for the men's basketball team, and he is notoriously indirect. Let's just say that to put it nicely. The first question I ever asked was something tactical. We had just lost a game. I don't even remember who it was against, but somebody in the Big East. And I asked him some sort of technical question, and he took like 3 or 4 seconds of silence to just stare at me before he gave me like a 3-word answer, and I felt like an idiot. And Troy's never going to do that. Bob ended up being a really nice guy after the fact, but Troy's never going to do that. Troy will give you his honest answer, his honest perception on things. And like I said, he cares about this community and this club so much. And then I think it also presents an interesting, I don't know, I would write the right word for this is an interesting, I guess, obstacle for you guys. I mean, so you're both, covering this team as journalists, but you're also both fans, right? So it's got to be hard sometimes to separate, like I said, you might be mad because of a tactical decision or something like that, but then you got to go into a press conference and you got to be professional about it, right? I would imagine that creates some toughness for you guys.
Yeah, it basically just shuts me up because there are certain things that I can't figure out how to word it professionally, so I just don't say it. I just don't ask it, and I'm fine with that. And honestly, to be perfectly candid, I am a fan. I am the journalism. The journalism part is maybe like this much. And I mean, we started Somos Unidos News, and the statement was by fans for fans. I mean, it was born out of a lack of coverage and fans going, hey, if you other fans want to hear more about the club, write more about the club, whatever, come to us and read what we write or write for us or do whatever you want. And so Seth is way more professional than me and Earl ever will be, but it's because of that passion and stuff that I think our show is it's fun. It's not, we're not trying to be professional when we're in the show a lot of the times, and sometimes luckily we've never had to have you get sicked on us for anything, but
I don't really do the sicking thing.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm really of the firm belief that people should say what they want to say, obviously within reason. Don't threaten anybody's family.
Right.
But people should be able to say what they want to say, and I don't really believe in the whole sicking thing. Now, if you're gonna come to a press conference and be unprofessional, that's one thing, but
Right.
you guys would never do that. So it's like I said, the access is important. The ability for people to be able to ask questions is important. The ability for people to be able to be heard in general is important. So the whole sicking thing, that's just never going to be me.
Well, I know Earl would appreciate that.
and yeah, like Jacob said, we come on our podcast, we like to have fun with it, and we feel like we can be critical, we can second guess, or can do things, and obviously, Earl, I'm sure is not a huge fan of Juan Pablo being played as much as he is, and
Sure.
He's been critical of Alex at times, and so we actually had
He's dumb, to be fair.
yeah,
I have no idea why he is, but he is. I think I know where it comes from, because I was on the same boat before the season started. We're both huge fans of Phil, and when Cody got moved to New York City, which was a great thing for him, me and Earl both felt, oh, this is great. Phil's going to get a chance to shine. And then when you bring in Alex, and he's a world-class talent and has been huge for us, and is obviously the right choice to start at the moment. I don't think Troy would put him in there if Phil was better than him. But it's a love for Phil that has translated into a distaste for Alex, even if it's not warranted whatsoever.
Well, I love Phil. Phil is an incredible guy and a hell of a goalkeeper, and I think he's absolutely fantastic. And I think what you're describing is kind of similar to what RJ Montano dealt with in 2019 and 2020. He was the biggest Ben Bury fan, and I love Ben. Ben is wonderful, even though he plays for that team down south that we don't like now. I love Ben. He's a great guy, great goalkeeper. And RJ was always talking about how much he wanted to see Ben play, because Ben is great. And that almost kind of grew into, frustration with Cody. And again, while I get it, it's not Cody's fault that he's doing a hell of a job. It's not Cody's fault that he's earned it. I'm thrilled for Cody. You can be both at the same time, right? Like, I want to see Phil be the best goalkeeper in the league, right? And I want to see Alex be the best goalkeeper in the league. I love both these guys. They're both great dudes, and the thing is, for me anyway, I trust that Troy has given each of these guys their best shot, whether they're in goal or striker or midfield or defense. And Alex has earned where he is, and Phil, hopefully he gets his opportunities when the time is right. And until then, I'm cheering for the guy that's in goal. But again, everybody's got their right to say, damn, it should have been this guy, it should have been that guy. Ultimately, neither you nor Seth nor myself are the ones who decide who the 11 or 18 on the sheet are.
Yeah, we try to guess, and we're often never right.
I never get that right.
And the conversation about Alex versus Phil, and we actually brought on Casey Gasson a few weeks ago, and I don't know if you heard that conversation, but because Earl had a number of issues with how Alex was playing, and he wasn't listening to us, so he brought Casey on, and Casey's like, "Yeah, no, Earl, you're wrong." We're like, Earl, listen to the professional goalkeeper here, and that's again part of the community. Like we've been able to build that connection there, through the soul and the runners and you guys, and we're able to talk to folks who may have a little bit more understanding than we do, and I think that's great.
Yeah, it's always good to get the kind of that expertise from somebody who actually has played the position, right? Like, I played it in ASL at a really bad level, so I'm not going to be much help to you. But like I said, I love Phil and Alex, so that just kind of works out well for me.
So I mean, let's talk about the bond a little bit. I talked to Peter yesterday, talked a little bit about that, and the club has. And one thing that I want to point out, that I know the video has gotten some views, the podcast has got some listens. One of the things that Peter said, and in the press conference last week, it was said 32.5 million. Yesterday, Peter said minimum 32.5 million. So it sounds like, but he didn't want to put a cap on the amount that the club was willing to invest. And so, Peter kind of touched on a little bit from your perspective. from what you see on social media, I'm sure you have interactions with folks probably calling into the office and talking to you guys about it. What have your interactions been like with the community, prior to the press conference last week? And has that changed any since?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's been, just start off pretty broadly, it's been kind of all over the place, right? You have people who immediately are on board. You have people who immediately hate it. And you've got the vast majority of people who are somewhere in between. And the most important thing that we can do is have these conversations. One, not just to convince people to vote for the stadium, although that's great, but just to get people answers to questions, right? It's a big deal. It's a big deal. I mean, it's a $50 million bond issue. It's a potentially 80 to 85, whatever the number is, $1 million stadium. Like, that is not a small thing. And so we shouldn't overlook people's concerns. It's perfectly reasonable for people to have concerns about these things. So we need to be willing to talk to people, listen to their concerns, answer their questions. And that's been the most crucial thing. And the thing we've done and we're continuing to do, we've had these community conversations. Seth, I know you've been in a few of those. That's absolutely crucial. As far as the ads you're talking about there, I think it's been more positive since people have started to see those things, because I think there's been a fair amount of misinformation regarding the bond in general on social media. And I think a lot of that has come from folks who are opposed. And look, if you get all the facts, all the information, and you vote no, you're perfectly in your right to do so. But we just want to make sure that people have all the information, people have all the facts, that they're not relying on misinformation. And so that's why it's been so crucial to make sure we get the word out, about these misconceptions, that, it's not going to be owned by the city, and by the team. That's absolutely crucial. The vast majority of these stadium projects, where the city puts in money in a bond and the club puts in some money, the vast majority of them, the club ends up owning the stadium. I've done doing a lot of research on this. It's kind of been my last few months. I am unaware of a stadium project where the club put in such a high percentage of the money and they didn't own the stadium. I've never seen it in any sport, at any level. So it's a really interesting thing. And so that's one of the misconceptions that we have to work on. And then there's tons of other ones, but getting the word out, having conversations with people, listening to people is the most important thing we can do.
Yeah. And also in our conversation with Peter yesterday, he talked about the community benefits agreement. And we didn't get a chance to talk about, during the show itself, but we talked about it afterwards, and he really wanted to emphasize this point, is that without this benefits agreement that goes into place first, whichever neighborhood the stadium goes into, whether it's Bareilles or Sawmill area or wherever it may be, that the club is investing money in these communities. They're making promises to these communities that they're not just going to come in and like move people out of their homes. They're not just going to come in and gentrify the entire area. And so Peter really wanted to stress that this is out there. And while we don't necessarily have, like all the details on this yet, the club is absolutely invested in these areas.
Yeah, 100%. And, it's kind of something that's really unheard of, is that, when that letter of intent was signed, we had the press conference last week about that. One of the things that was included in the letter of intent is that a CBA is required before we can start the stadium. I think that's pretty unprecedented. I'm unaware of any other project that has done that. The community benefits agreement has to be agreed between the city, the club, and the community that the stadium will be placed in prior to shovels going into the ground. And that's absolutely crucial. And that's something that we pushed for. It's something that we wanted, because we want the community to want us there. We don't want to be in a place where we're not wanted. We want to be in a place where we can improve the community, where we can grow the community, where we can make things better. That's the goal. We happen to be a soccer team, but first and foremost, we're a community impact organization, and that has always been the case and will always be the case. We're now legally required to make sure we have a CBA before we can put shovels in the ground, and that's the way it should be. So we address these issues. We address the issues that are important to these individual communities. So whether it's, things like business incubators, or things like, fighting crime, making sure we put up lighting. It could be things like, trying to do what we can to avoid gentrification. All of these things, all of these important conversations that need to be had, we can address these things. We find out things that are important to individual communities. They tell us, and we find a way to make that work. And we put together a CBA that works for everybody. Otherwise, we don't put shovels in the ground, period.
So obviously we want this to pass, and we want to get the correct information out to everybody. But if in November it gets turned down, does the club have a plan B?
That's a good question. I think obviously we're laser focused on plan A right now, right? And hopefully, everything goes according to plan, and November 2nd comes and goes, and the bond gets approved and we can move forward, and the funding is in place for that to happen. If that does not happen, I think one thing that we want to make really, really clear, and I think Pete mentioned this in his conversation with you, Seth, the other day, New Mexico United is not moving out of New Mexico. We're not going anywhere. This is our home. This is where we're all either from here originally or we've lived here long term. And, this isn't like some NFL team where the owner is going to pick up and move, from Baltimore to Cleveland or whatever. We're not going anywhere. We're going to figure it out. I don't know what it looks like. I don't have an answer on that. And hopefully we don't have to find out, but
right.
We're not going anywhere. That's the most important thing that people can know. We're going to be here.
Leading up to all this, the club has done some community events. You guys have done the Zoom meetings. You've gone out into Bareilles into some of the communities and started talking to folks. Are there any other upcoming community Zoom meetings or outreach meetings, in person or virtual, that folks can attend? Yes. We're working on getting a few of them set up right now. Working one with the Hispano Chamber, Albuquerque Hispano Chamber, to try and get one set up, probably at their location in Bareilles, which would be a really good conversation. Hope to have a decent number of people there. As you guys know, we've done them so far, not entirely, but mostly via Zoom, just to be a little cautious with the pandemic. But I think if we do it in a way where it's whether we have people, make sure people are masked or distanced or things like that, I think we can start to do some in person as well. But yeah, Hispano Chamber, working on a few other, Pete and I have gone out to individual organizations a lot too, right? Pete had a meeting the other day. He spoke with this group called the Coronado Thunderbirds, which is retirees from Kirtland Air Force Base and Sandia Labs. Talked to them a little bit, and we're going to talk to some unions, and we're make sure that we get in local newsletters and all these kinds of things, because like I said before, the most important thing is making sure that people have all the right information. At that point, like I said, if you want to vote no, you want to vote yes, go right ahead, do whatever you want to do. We just want to make sure that everybody's got the info.
With your job with the club, how nervous do you get when Peter talks to, whether it's Seth yesterday or anything like that? Because there was a hashtag Pete Leaks during the off season when it came to stuff. Is it as stressful as it sounds like it would be?
You're kind of triggering some trauma for me with that hashtag. So the thing about Pete, when I first started the job, yes, it was super stressful, and I'm like, oh my God, Pete, this is just what you do. And it's funny because I was on the other side prior to that, right? Like I was doing the curse cast, and when Pete came on and hashtag Pete Leaked, it was great. I loved it.
Yeah.
Like, let's go. Let's get this stuff going. And then I get to the other side. I'm like, oh, come on. Like, damn it, Pete. You can't do that. Like, we weren't supposed to tell people about that. But you know what? I've kind of reached a point now, I think, of almost like a zen with it. Like, you know what? We very well, Pete, we're going to go on, and Pete may very well say some things he's not supposed to say. And I will figure it out. I can tell him ahead of time, hey, Pete, make sure you don't say these things. He's not going to listen to me. He is who he is, and it's, I wouldn't have him any other way. That is who he is, and I am appreciative of that. And I say this unequivocally, I think he's the best owner in sports, and for many reasons, but I think the biggest one is just his connection to the community. He cares about the people, and he cares about the fans, and part of that is Pete Leaks, and so I've just come to accept it, and I will clean up the pieces when it happens.
Yeah, I personally love it, and I
bet you do. I bet you do, Jacob.
The most glaring one was after the Salih Brian Brown transfers. He commented on Facebook. I'd long thought that there was a Brian Brown issue is not the right word, but there was something else going on there with him not being on the team he wasn't playing. He wasn't on the injury report, but he was just nowhere to be found. And then after that happened, Peter was on Instagram and said, yeah, just the fit wasn't there. He didn't fit with us, so we didn't fit with him, blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, okay, at least I know that something was going on there. Thank you, Pete.
Yeah. And that's the kind of thing, like I said, where Pete goes on and does his thing. And, ahead of time, I might have been like, Pete, don't talk about that. But after the fact, I'm just like, you know what? It's probably good that people know that. It's probably a good thing.
It is.
So, yeah. So, I honestly, like I said, I've reached a point of zen with Pete leaks, and I don't encourage it by any means, but I'm not going to get bent out of shape about it.
I think probably the best line that I've heard out of Pete at one of the press conferences is last week he said, I have some prepared remarks my team knows I'm not going to use. And I just thought that was fantastic.
All right, let's be very clear. He did not prepare those remarks. It was not him. I mean, he was certainly involved in the process, but it's just like, it's Lucas and I working on making sure these remarks are good for him, and he likes them, and we work together on it. But we put all this work into it, and Pete's like, you know what? He's going to go off the cuff. But what I've said to him before, and this is 100% true, is that he's just better off the cuff. I could write the best thing that I could think of for him, right? And it'll probably feel robotic if you were to just read it. That's not who Pete is. He's an excited person. He's an excitable person, and he's genuine and real. And I think that comes through when he talks to people. So I don't want to try and control Pete. I have no desire to try and control Pete. He is who he is, and we love him because of it.
It goes back to that word that you were talking about with the fans, that passion. And I think that he's one of the most passionate, not only owners in sports, but I think he's one of the most passionate fans of New Mexico United, even though he's the owner. He loves the club, I think, more than anybody else. So, and he shows that when he talks to us. What other owner do you see walking around the stadium right before a match, shaking every hand that wants to shake his hand? And this was more pre-pandemic than post-pandemic, but that first year he was everywhere. You'd see him all the time. You'd see him at the Curse tailgates. You'd see him walking on the concourse throughout the match. You'd see him everywhere. And
he still does it. He still does it. I mean, he's out there at the tailgates most days, and he still jumps in with the Curse for the first 5:05 of most matches. And we're pretty lucky to have an owner like that. We really are. And it's sometimes easy to overlook that kind of thing, but when you take a minute to think about, we could be dealing with some Jerry Jones up in his ivory tower, but we're not. We got Pete, and that's awesome.
Mm-hmm. I've got one final question on the bond issue. So we're roughly 33 days from the November 2nd election. We've had the Burnco voter registration link up here on the screen for folks. Does the club, I'm not sure when the last day to register or to make sure you're registered to vote is. Do you happen to know when that is? And does the club have any events between now and then that folks that'll help folks get registered?
Yeah, so I believe it's 30 days before the election, so that would be, I guess, the 3rd of October. I'll need to double check that, but I believe that's the last day to register to make sure you're ready to go for the election. But we have had a voter registration booth at the last 3 home matches. We'll have one more at the next upcoming home match. Hopefully that's not too late. And that's kind of been the other thing. What we wanted to do earlier in my plan on that was we were going to put up a big QR code on the screen at the games. I think it'd be a good idea. People could just scan it from wherever they are in the stadium. But we did apparently that's not allowed. So we had to get approval from the Secretary of State, and it never came back. It's a whole thing. So, but we've had that booth. I know we've gotten a couple dozen people registered at matches to vote, which is great, regardless of whether you're voting on the bond issue, voting for it, voting against it, voting for mayor, whatever you're voting for. It's just good to be registered to vote in general. If people vote for the stadium, that's a little icing on the cake for us.
Yeah, definitely. And as I mentioned to you before the show, we'll make sure we have the Burnco voter registration link in the show notes tonight, and we'll keep putting that on social media between now and whatever the date is. So yeah, folks, if you're not registered already, get out and register. If you need to update your registration. But get registered to vote. Like David said, whether it's for this election or the next one, whatever. it's your vote, your decision. You help decide what happens in our city and in our state. So get out and register. Again, we don't care. We're not going to take sides, political affiliation, anything like that. Just get out and register. That's your chance to have a say in how our state goes. So
blue, red, green, and anything in between. Just vote.
There you go. Moving on ahead, we mentioned it earlier. New Mexico United is headed out this weekend to play Lou City FC for the first time ever. Louisville City has been one of the premier clubs in the USL since their inception. If you know their history, they did. I believe they bought the rights from Orlando City after Orlando City went to MLS, and since then they've done nothing but win. Basically, they've got 2 USL League Cups. They've competed. I think they finished worse than third ever in their history, going back to 2015. I apologize. They did finish 6th last season. But obviously we know 2020 off year for everybody. But David, what are your thoughts going into this match? I mean, obviously it's going to be tough. United has not necessarily played well on the road this year, and Louisville they play well. They play well at home.
Yeah, I mean they're in the coolest stadium in the USL right now, in my opinion, and I'm really excited to see that on Sunday. See that in person, and I'm hoping I can get a little bit of backstage tour. So if I can, I'll take some photos and show you what I can show you. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. They're one of the premier teams in the league, not just in the Eastern Conference, but in the entire USL Championship. They've had success from day one. I think Brad Estes is one of the best owners in all of the USL Championship. And you guys got to remember, they had a little turmoil early in the season. Firing John. I don't know, firing. They and John Hackworth parted ways. I guess is the right way to put it. But they had some managerial shifts, and it's been an interesting year for them. Despite that, leading their division over a really good Birmingham team, by the way. And I think right now, they're probably, if not the best, the second best team in the Eastern Conference. Tampa Bay is also really, really good, in my opinion. So it's not going to be easy. But if you look at form, I think we might be catching them at the right time. They've got, I think it's 3 straight draws. Birmingham is right on their heels. I was kind of hoping, they drew 1-1 last night. I was kind of hoping Lou City would win because I think they would have clinched a playoff spot at that point, which maybe they would have rested some guys. I don't know. But they, like us, they've got several games in a row coming up over the last month of the season. I think we probably have the busiest last month of the regular season, and they're close on our heels with that. So, I think we had probably, in my opinion, our best road game of the season in San Antonio, just from a defensive point of view. And, we get that last, 86th, I think, minute goal from Bees or whatever it was. I just think we've been really strong defensively, especially you think of how we played in San Antonio earlier in the year. I mean, that 3-0 loss was tough. And I mean, that was the beginning of that streak of 7, or within that streak of 7 matches without a win. And to go back there and steal a win in the way we did, I think is just really kind of shows the growth of the team in that short amount of time. And I think we're the hottest we've been in a while, and Lou City hasn't won in a while. And I don't make predictions because every time I do, we lose. So I just hope we play well and hope we can get a win. I think these guys are up for it.
Yeah, looking at their schedule, they're unbeaten in their last 5. So their last loss was a 1-0 loss back on September 3rd against FC Tulsa. So they've had a pretty good run of matches there. They're playing in pretty good form, and the news, they actually had some big news today.
The Barca kid, right?
Yeah, Sociedad. Jonathan Gomez is going to La Liga after the end of the USL Championship season, and so he's been a talent, and he's developed and come up through there, and I think that's fantastic for them. And I think that speaks to the growth of the USL as a whole. Like, we're seeing guys now transferring out, and we're getting supposed record fees for some of these guys. And obviously the league isn't going to disclose the fee here for Jonathan, but
sure.
They've got a very solid club front to back, and I think no matter what way we look at it, this is going to be a tough matchup. And I know that they had a tough match midweek against Atlanta United too. And so it's going to be a real interesting match to see. It's going to be a nice afternoon match for once. For me, it's kind of hard to pick who to key in on this match, because we don't see these Eastern Conference clubs a whole lot. And if I'll open this up to both of you guys, if you had to pick one person on their roster to kind of keep an eye on, who would that be?
You want to take that first, Jacob?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of going to go chalk and say Gomez. I mean, you have a USL player that's going to transfer to Europe. I want to see what the fuss is about firsthand and see how he stacks up against some of our guys and how some of our guys are able to handle him or in some cases not handle him. So I'm excited to see that and see what the fuss is about with him and go from there.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree on Gomez, and it's always interesting for me, and it's only happened a few times, but the ability to see a stack up against Eastern Conference teams, right? Because ultimately, prior to 2020, they were two different leagues entirely, with the exception of the championship game. And so to see it a couple times this year, obviously, Loudon was a strange game, and in a lot of ways, a red card that shouldn't have been a red card right off the bat. And all that other fun stuff. But, we've got Hartford coming in here shortly. We've got Louisville, obviously, at the weekend. So it's always interesting for me to see Eastern Conference opponents, teams that we haven't seen in the past. And Gomez is unequivocally their best player, right? So excited to see him, how we shape up against a player of that talent. And I think there are players of that talent throughout the league that we've faced before. So I'm just interested to see it. I'm interested to see kind of that Eastern-Western matchup, and again, excited to check out that awesome stadium as well.
Coach is going to be upset that you left out a Charleston mention there, but that
was a much better result than
Loudon. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, that is true. The Louisville does have Cameron Lancaster. One of the obviously, I don't think anyone's going to catch Haji Berry in the Golden Boot race, but Cameron Lancaster comes in 15 goals on the season. Haven't really seen, haven't really had too many opportunities to watch Lou City. I'm probably gonna go back Saturday and watch the last couple matches if I can to kind of get an idea. And anytime you face someone that's got the scoring prowess that Lancaster does, Troy was able to come out and adjust our game plan to shut down Haji Berry after that one really good performance that he had. And I think, we might see something similar to that with Lancaster. But again, I don't know enough about him to really say for sure what we have to do to shut him down. But he's definitely someone to keep an eye on. And then, they're solid at the back too. And so I think we go in this weekend, and I think we're lucky if we get a point.
I mean, it is one of the toughest places to play in the USL. Again, a brand new stadium that they routinely fill pretty well, and against a damn good team. And Cameron Lancaster has been doing that for years too. It's not just this year. He's one of the top goal scorers all time in the USL Championship. So yeah, he's going to be a tough guy to shut down. And the thing with Colorado Springs that you mentioned, the goal was to shut Haji Berry down, but in that situation, it wasn't just shutting Haji Berry down. It was Michael Encian too. It was these other players who come forward on that attacking line for Colorado Springs, and it's going to be a similar situation here. I really do think that obviously Cameron Lancaster will be your primary focus, but you can't key on him too much, or else you're going to be hit on the backside. And like you said, they get a goal and they're so defensively strong, it'll be tough to get one back. So scoring first will be key.
Jacob, is there anything that you expect to see from United? Do you think we go in there and play a more defensive formation? Maybe see Juan Pablo. And Juan Pablo had a great game last night. He played really well on the midfield. I think the pairing of him and Salih was absolutely fantastic. Do you see us going in playing more defensive on Sunday, or do you think we come out and try to go a little bit more attacking and going forward and try to get that early goal?
I still think we're kind of a desperate team, and I don't want the players to lose that fight that they've had the last 4 or 5 matches, with the exception being that Austin Bold match. So I want to see them come out, and I don't want to see them back on their heels. I want to see them pressing forward and attacking and trying to take it to them. And if that leaves us open and we get beat 4-0, then so be it. Hopefully the guys can keep their heads up and move on, and we can take it to Hartford midweek and change our attitude there. But I hope that they come out, and even if it's Guzman and Salih, I think we created a lot of chances last night. Even if I thought going into the match that it was going to be that Rivas and Tenari or Rivas and Salih pairing in the midfield there. Even though it wasn't that, I still think we had a lot of opportunities, especially in that first half, and probably should have scored more than 2 goals. So I hope that whoever's in there, that we just keep the right mentality of going forward and not giving them a healthy respect, but not being fearful of their attack, if that makes sense.
I completely agree, Jacob, and I kind of use an analogy. I love boxing. I'm a big boxing guy. Grew up watching boxing, and if you're in a prize fight, you come out there and you've got options, right? You can either sit back and take some hits and hope to get a counter, or you can go out there and throw some punches and try and get a knockout. And I think in this situation, the knockout makes far more sense. You go for the knockout, and again, you mentioned you very well may miss and catch an uppercut, but if you sit back and you take body blow after body blow after body blow, you're going to lose. You're going to lose. So go out there, take your chances, try and hit one early, push, and go for the knockout. I agree with you 100%, Jake.
All right.
So do we know if Mondo's going to be available Sunday, or is he going to already be with El Salvador?
I believe he's going to be with El Salvador, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
Okay, yeah, like I mentioned earlier, that was kind of one of our debates from the other night. Is when he was going to be gone, how many matches would he miss? And honestly, looking at their schedule, I wasn't entirely sure he would miss out on this match on Sunday. I'm thinking,
not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure on that. I know that they've got a match. I would need to go back and check the schedule, but I think they've got a match that's just right next to the Hartford match, so he definitely missed that one. And maybe the match after, I'm not 100% sure. I remember looking at it and thinking he's probably going to miss 2 was my guess.
I think we said like the 7th, the 10th, and the 13th, or somewhere around there were the 3 matches for El Salvador.
Well, hopefully we've got him for Louisville. I mean, he's a crucial piece of the offense. So, especially against a team as good as Louisville, I would hate to be without him. But if we're without him, then I hope he's kicking ass with El Salvador.
Yeah, we definitely want to see him do well, anytime. And I believe there were, 5 different USL players called up for El Salvador.
Yeah,
and
that's all USL.
I think it's a fantastic look for the league as a whole, fantastic for Armando, and getting that exposure at the national level, going out and playing in some of these competitions against some really good squads, and CONCACAF, and I think it's just great for his growth and his development, and I think it benefits him to go out and do that and come back and show what he can do. Yeah. It
benefits our team. I mean, he goes out there and, he learns from some of the best players that El Salvador has to offer, whether they're playing in the USL or Liga MX or somewhere else. And, he's learning all these different things and bringing those kinds of things back. And to your other point, I'm really looking forward to El Salvador against Jamaica, because both of those teams are so USL heavy. It's going to be like a USL All-Star game. It's exciting.
Yeah, it's definitely gonna be a lot of fun to watch. David, you said you don't do predictions, so I'm sure we do a prediction every week as far as the matches. Jacob, what do you think the scoreline is this week?
I know that Tuesday I said I was going to do 4-0 until it happened. I don't think this match is one of the ones that I'm going to do that. I'm going to say 2-1 United.
2-1 United. Okay, go into Lou City and steal some 3 points. All right, I like it. That's bold.
We've established, Seth, that as a fan first, I don't use my logical thinking brain to do predictions. So I'm never going to say, "Oh, I think we lose." I might say we draw, but with our form and just the hunger that we've been playing with, and the fact that from here on out, every match we are desperate for points so that we can make the playoffs. So. I just hope we keep up that energy and we go in there and it might not be pretty, but I think we come away with a win.
And to be fair, I do occasionally pick against this just because looking at the matchups and how our form has been and things like that, and I always preface it and say, I want to be wrong. I want to be proven wrong. I want us, because I picked against us the second San Antonio match. I was right there. I picked against us the last San Antonio match, and I couldn't have been happier to have been wrong there. Like I'm glad to see that, and so. Going into Louisville City this weekend, again, they're one of the top scoring clubs in the USL. They've got a great defensive unit. I think it goes 1-1. I think going to Louisville City, taking a point, coming back home. I know it's not 3, but still picking up a point against a club like Louisville City. I think it's a win. I think it keeps the momentum, and I think coming back and then against Hartford and RGV again, like it's just a great stretch of points there that we can pick up.
If we can go in there and steal a win in Louisville City, again, potentially the toughest place to play in the USL. If we can do that and then come back home, like you said, with matches against Hartford and RGV, which are matches that are winnable. They're not pushovers by any means, but they're winnable. I mean, that really sets us up well for the rest of the season. We've got a tough match coming up against San Diego. That's going to be tough on the road. But man, we're getting hot at the right time, and stealing 3 points in Louisville City would be wonderful.
Yeah, so can't wait to see that. We're gonna have we're gonna have a lot to watch on Sunday. There's a lot going on before the international break, and obviously we'll be cheering on Armando once he leaves, and then we'll be back at the lab on Wednesday. A lot going on. Hartford's gonna be interesting. Again, another club that we haven't seen a whole lot of. Gonna have to do some research on that and see what's going on. But yeah, we got a real good stretch. Like I said, a real good stretch of winnable games. San Diego's gonna be tough, and I was looking at the schedules for the remaining schedules for the different teams, and RGV has 7 consecutive matches all within the division. That's the rest of their schedule. We've got the 3 non-division matches still to go. So I think arguably our divisional schedule is a little bit easier than those non-conference matchups, but it's going to be tough. Like, every single point is going to be valuable from here until the end of October.
If it was easy, everyone would do it.
Exactly. So, I think
looking at Austin's schedule, I know you mentioned RGVs, but Austin does not have an easy slate coming up either. They still play El Paso, they play Birmingham. They've got some tough ones as well. So it sets up well for us, knock on wood. But if this recent run of form holds true for the rest of the season, I could definitely see Austin and RGV having a tough go of it going up, and if that happens, then looks like we'll see Phoenix, which will be fun.
No, we won't. We gotta get that home playoff match. Let's get that 2 seed. Come on.
Oh man, aiming big over here.
It's
not
do it.
Impossible. It's not impossible.
Not impossible. I mean, we're only 6 points back right now, so
I would love it. That's for sure. So.
Yeah. So we have fun end of the season. 7 matches here left in less than 30 days. So a lot of fun. Can't wait to see what happens out on the pitch. And David, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate you taking time out. And I know it's getting late for you. And so, do you have any final thoughts before Jacob closes out the show?
Just excited for Louisville City on Sunday. Excited for as we mentioned, the vote on November 2nd on the stadium bond. And just want to encourage people, if you have questions, if you have thoughts, if you have concerns, my email address, you can always reach out to me, david@newmexicoutd.com. Contact me on social media, whatever. I'm an open book, and I'm happy to chat with anybody about any questions they may have and just talk through things. And you got the link down there at the bottom, register to vote. Make sure you do. And This is a project that's going to improve our community. That's what it's always been about first. We happen to play soccer, but that's secondary to improving our community and always will be. So thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, David. And actually, I have one more question. I've been meaning to ask this for 3 years now. How did you end up in New Mexico?
I was a TV reporter. I came here, got a job with KOAT. So I was a TV reporter at KOAT for a little while, and decided to get out of the news business, but fell in love with New Mexico and decided to stay. 'Cause it's funny, when I got here, I had a 3-year contract with KOAT, and said, I don't really want to be in New Mexico. I didn't know anything about New Mexico. I mean, I'd never been to New Mexico. I had never.
Did you know it was part of the United States at least?
I did know that.
Okay.
I did know that. I did get an A in
sure.
US in geography. But I didn't know much about New Mexico, and like I said, I was like, I'll do my 3-year contract and then I'll just move on to the next place. But I got here and I fell in love with it, man. And that 3-year contract came and went, and I just decided this is where I wanted to be. This is where I wanted to stay. And when people ask me where I'm from, I tell them I'm from New Mexico. This is my home.
Good deal. Much like Salih said not that long ago. So, so thanks again for having you. New Mexico is lucky to have you here. You've done a great job with United, and we're happy as you're being the person that we're dealing with. We're happy that it's you and you coming from the fan background, kind of know what we're thinking at times too. So I think it's the best of both worlds. And thank you for coming on, and thank you for having Peter come on yesterday and talk to Seth. And we hopefully you have a safe trip. You guys have some fun over there and get back safely. And then Seth will be there Wednesday. I unfortunately can't make midweek matches, being 2.5 hours away from Albuquerque, but I'll be there in spirit and I'll be cheering from here. So until next week, guys, somos unidos.
Let's get 3 points.
Woo-hoo.